Thanks, Sergey. All right, so what I want to talk to you today is a term which I learned very recently called H2H. In our most of my career, I'm used to the term B2B, which means doing business to business transaction, or we do a B2C, which means business to consumer. You know, when somebody makes cosmetics, it's business to consumer. But when somebody is making a jet engine part, it's a business to business. But I learned something about H2H, which is human to human. A guy by name Brian Kramer said, we don't do businesses with businesses. Humans do business with humans. And a similar concept I came around with innovation also. There has to be a reason for innovation, and that reason, that purpose has to be a human. And whoever does the innovation, whoever comes up with the idea and goes through the process of creating a gyro lift, gyro lift is a beautiful example of human to human innovation. It's human ingenuity, human engineers, human manufacturing. Yes, we take tools, yes, we take robotics, we do automation, but they are there to just help the humans. It's eventually a human idea to serve a human need. That's what this topic is all about. My usual style is I touch upon why we do this, you know, why this technology, why are we doing something for society or sustainability, how we do it, how we generate ideas, take decisions, and create a product, and what goes in. We do a lot of conversation these days with Industry 4.0. There is more to Industry 4.0. There is also Leadership 4.0, which means how do you lead an organization which is adopting digital transformation. And then there is human-machine integration. Just imagine yourself in a room where it's not a robot, but you are in a boardroom making decision, and there's an artificial intelligence sitting next to you trying to help you take decisions. Last month, I published my first, and probably the first paper in the history of publication, where my co-author is an artificial intelligence. And the topic of that paper was human factors in innovation. It was quite unnerving for me to collaborate with an AI, and AI is generating content and telling me how humans take bad decisions and what do humans need to do to take good decisions. And when I wrote that paper and I submitted it to the journal had difficulty handling it. They were not able to cross-validate the authenticity of the content. They were not willing to accept that an AI-written paper can be published in a peer-reviewed journal. Finally, it went through the technical peer review. Then the journal legal department had a problem. They did not know who was going to sign the copyright form on behalf of AI. So we went through all those hurdles. And that will happen when humans and machines start working together. We have seen the challenges on the shop floor with robotics, but we will also see the challenges around the conference rooms, around the boardrooms, around decision making. So this is also a part of human being in the loop of Industry 4.0. All right, let's start with the why. So we all know Industry 4.0 by now very well. Some people say it has 5 technologies, some say 10, 12. The last chart I had was 17. If I come here again next year, it will be probably 20, 21. This thing changes continuously. But do we know why we do this? Do we know why we are going after digital transformation? Many of us are not aware of why it is happening. Some of us are pushing it because we can make money from this. Companies want to push Industry 4.0 for financial reasons. And some of us who are in research environment do it just for the sake of technology. We just like developing new items. But is that enough? Should we do Industry 4.0 purely for technology? I submit no. We should do it for the sake of society. We should do it for the sake of humanity, what happened here. We should do it for the sake of humanity. We should do it for society. We do it for things like smart homes, make life comfortable, smart cities, smart infrastructure, smart factory. Yeah, that we know, that's where it all started. Smart healthcare, mobility was one example. We should do digital transformation only where it makes sense, where it helps you improve the way you live, the way you work, the way you engage with other people, the way you entertain yourself. So that's the next level of purpose, society. Is that enough? I say that is not enough either. There is one more level we have to think about when we innovate. And that's around handling a precious stone. How do we handle a piece of diamond that we have? We preserve it. We keep it in a closed safe. We make sure it is not stolen. What if that precious stone is what I just gave you a little while ago? So 5 or 6 of these sponge balls that I gave around, I would like for you to hold it in your hand for a second and look at it and ask yourself a question. If this were the most precious stone that you inherited from your parents and grandparents, and there's only one of it, how will you preserve it? If you ever think of it that way, there is only one. There's no replacement available for this. Because, sponge, yes, but the real one, no. We need to sustain this. So when we innovate, we have to be conscious about our impact on the planet Earth. We have to think about, come on. We have to think about sustainability. We do not have a backup planet. We have to maintain this. There is a concept of Earth Overshoot Day. I don't know if you have heard this term before or not. Have you heard of this Earth Overshoot Day? No. It's a very, very simple concept to understand sustainability. It's like budget. Every month we get a paycheck. Every year companies have a certain budget. And you have certain expenses. And if your expenses are more than your income, you have a problem. Same way, the planet Earth has a certain amount of biocapacity. It supplies a certain amount of oxygen. It converts an amount of carbon dioxide into oxygen. It can replenish fish at a certain rate. It can replenish other resources for humanity to survive at a certain rate. It's called biocapacity. And we humans have an ecological footprint. We consume resources on the planet continuously. And what happens if our consumption of resources is more than what the planet Earth can provide us? We will run out of budget. A date in a year when you run out of budget is called Earth Overshoot Day. This organization, Global Footprint Network, has been tracking it for 52 years, and it's continuously gone down. 50 years ago, in 1970, for the first time, humanity consumed more resources from the planet than planet was giving it to us. But it was just a day or two, so okay. But we have not woken up. So when we talk about climate change, it's real. There is an implication to that, and the simplest way to understand is the Earth Overshoot Day. That tells us when we run out of budget. For the entire planet, this year, in the year 2021, it was July 29. For France, it was May 7th. Just think of it. for a moment. And US was even worse, March 14. We have to do something. Every country has to do their part. Every family, every individual has to do their part to move the date back to December 31st. Because as of now, we are eating into the reserves of the planet, which is not good for the long term. So when we innovate, we need to innovate not for technology, we need to innovate for society, and we need to innovate to maintain the ecological balance on the planet. We need to sustain that. Now, 2 years ago when I gave this talk for the first time, somebody said, Ripi, don't talk about saving humans. This rock will be here. Planet Earth has been there for billions of years. It will be here. Talk about saving humans. Because if we don't preserve it, human species will go extinct. So we have to be conscious about this. And if you think of it, we are all trapped. Where are we trapped? Where are we trapped in our thinking, in our behaviors? We are actually physically trapped on this planet. We are trapped on this rock. Yeah, we talk about SpaceX, space tourism, few people up there. We're 8 billion. By the time we get a way to go up there somewhere and live there for a while, we may be 10 billion, and we may not have that much time to go inhabitate another planet. And would that make sense that we screw up Earth and then we go try and colonize Mars? Probably not. We must innovate to sustain. That's my first message for why we should innovate. We need to innovate for humans, but not just humans, we also need to innovate for humanity to preserve it. Let's talk about what. I briefly mentioned Industry 4.0, Leadership 4.0, and Machine-Human Integration 4.0. Okay? What really is Industry 4.0? Data is one piece, but really Industry 4.0 is a closed loop between digital world and the physical world. The classic example is driverless car. The sensors around the car are completely aware of the physical reality outside the car, can predict where other vehicles are moving in what direction, what speed, knows its destination, is processing all that physical reality into its digital computer to maneuver the car. And to maneuver the car, it translates that computation again into physical action through braking, acceleration, turning, so that it can take the occupant safely to its destination. This is the simplest and the most beautiful example of Industry 4.0, which completes the cycle between digital world and physical world and runs continuously. That is what is new, and that is what makes this revolution different than the previous one. We have had computers, we have had simulations. We knew how to go from physical world to digital world. We also knew how to go from digital world into the physical world. In the fourth revolution, we have closed the loop at a speed where we can do things in real time, like driving a car at 100 kilometers an hour. Digital, physical confluence. This is Industry 4.0. But what about humans? The next thing that is happening in our revolution is biological piece that's coming in. I would not define that as Industry 5 yet. I will let someone else define that term. And I don't know what else to call it. But I will say, think about it. It's beyond Industry 4.0. It's about digital, physical, and biological confluence. You need to think about all three loops together if you really want to keep the human in the loop and you want to innovate for humans. Gyro Lift is a good example of digital, physical, biological reality. Okay? But it can go one more step farther, and I will talk about that in a moment. Here is an example of going from physical to biological confluence over here, right? We know we have been doing it for 50 years, 70 years, implants. There's a physical structure gone into the biological body. We know of biosensors. We know of diabetes sensors. They allow you to convert a biological signal to a physical, to a digital signal, right? We talk about wearables. Wearables is another emerging era. In some sense, Gyro Lift is a very big wearable. Rather, it wears you rather than you wearing it. But wearables is picking up, and that's another digital, physical, biological confluence. And this is where innovation really brings value for human life, because it's changing lifestyles. It is helping us do things that we were not able to do before, or we were able to do at some time, but then we got handicapped and it doesn't work anymore. Biocomputers, that's the biological digital confluence. There's no physics here. Organ printing. How do you go from a digital world to a biological world? This 3D printing skin cells directly on the burn wounds. I know I saw that in Star Trek in 1998 or something, and we used to really think that's a fantasy, but that's almost there now. Can I print skin back on my body directly and heal a burn? It's there. It's not commercial yet. It probably doesn't have an FDA approval yet, and they will get into the same problems like I had with my AI paper. But it is coming. I don't know if video will play or not, but this one is where they are 3D printing a sensor directly on a lung that is actually pumping oxygen in and out. On a moving biological organ, you can 3D print a physical sensor. What a combination of digital, physical, biological world here for human health. Anyways, you got the idea. So then here is the next thing that can go into Gyro Lift. Actually, there is a wheelchair that's coming out, brain controlled. You put on a helmet, and helmet can pick up this micro electromagnetic signals in your brain, which you generate because you think something, and then you are able to operate a physical system. I saw a video of a quadriplegic driving a Formula One racing car by the power of thought, just purely power of thought. And I have seen pictures of gyro lift type equipment being operated by thought. So if all 4 limbs are not working, you can still think and do and live a life. So that's about the what. It's the digital, physical, biological confluence, which is the next generation of revolution. How do we do it? Well, a simple innovation value chain is you identify the human need, you generate a lot of ideas, then you figure out which ideas can actually serve a human need. And sometimes the idea you come up does not help. Sometimes you have to improve, and you talk to people. You improve your idea until your idea actually meets a human need. Then you go build a business case. Can you afford to make it? If you make it, can the human for whom you are making it, can they afford to buy it? And if that makes sense, just check it meets your purpose and ethics filter. If not, generate the ideas again until it all makes sense. And when it begins to make sense, you go execute the project. Okay? And in all of these steps, there is a significant amount of human intervention that is required. Doesn't matter how much computers you have, doesn't matter how many simulations you do, no matter how much communication, internet protocols you use, you cannot take human out of this loop. It's the human empathy that you need to understand human needs. It's the human brains that you have to use still to generate ideas, although we have tried generating ideas with artificial intelligence, and they were not awful. but it still does not empathize. It does not understand the context yet. Does it make business sense? Can you account for environmental impact? Can you account for other externalities? Machines are not yet ready to do that for you. So there's a lot of human involvement in making judgment, in doing risk assessment, in taking a rational decision, that you have to have human in that stage as well. And execution is eventually human controlled. Yes, we have a lot of automation. The entire factory of the future can be fully automated, and you could say, I've taken the human out. Almost. It's still controlled and programmed by humans. And at each stage, going from need to ideas to business case to project, there's a lot of judgment and decision making, and that is a human activity. And in that activity comes the human bias. And here is a summary of about 25 items that my AI partner came up with, saying where the humans have a decision which is biased. Okay. I will not go into the details. We all know any decision that we take at any point, just accept that it will have a bias. You just have to be aware of it and try to reduce it. And that's where diversity helps. Have multiple people look at the same thing together to reduce the bias. Sometimes we make wrong judgments. We fund a project that should not be funded. We do not fund a project that deserves to be funded. But every wrong decision is not completely lost. There is actually some value even when you end up making a wrong decision. At each gate, this idea doesn't make sense, this idea makes sense. It's okay, as long as a human, you say, I know I have a bias, I can be wrong, but if I'm wrong, I will learn something, I'll fix it, I'll go back. And it's okay. I talked about diversity. It is very, very important to actually have people with multiple thought process around the table when you are deciding what to fund. Investment decisions, judgments are best made when you have men and women, when you have young and senior citizens, when you have people from different cultures sit together and say, yes, this makes sense. One other point I want to mention is about ethics. As we innovate, as we get into these things of digital, physical, biological confluence, we must ask the questions, is it the right thing to do? Is it the right thing for every human involved? A quick and simple check could be, is it right for the consumer, customer? Is it right for the business? Is it right for the employees? Can it hurt non-consumers? Can it hurt the planet? There is so much unknown around digital revolution. And we fall into this center box where there is no history, we have no experience, there is no regulation because policies have not caught up, and my boss's boss wants to make money and wants to put this product in the market as soon as possible. Right? We really have to be conscious of what we do when we don't know its long-term outcome. So ethics is a question, a big question we must ask before any investment. Luckily, around artificial intelligence, there are serious ethical issues, and European Union has provided a guidance. 3 things they say: it should be lawful, ethical, robust. Actually, that's applied to all innovation. But from AI perspective, the simplest thing they say is that there is a human agency and oversight of AI. Do not let artificial intelligence go off on its own. Human must provide oversight. And then it goes on to various things, again, a diversity there to make sure that AI is actually addressing some of the biases. The accountability, the traceability, you should always, something goes wrong with a driverless car, who do you blame? Well, that's not important. What is important is, can you trace it back to where it came from? So traceability, accountability, transparency, those are all very important aspects. I would encourage all of you who are into the innovation space to look up the EU guidelines on AI ethics, and see that as you get deeper into dealing with data, you're aware of what not to do. Leadership 4.0, a little bit different than previous leadership because now you're dealing with machines and humans together. Just imagine one day your boss could be a robot. An AI system could be your boss, right? And it's quite possible, and we'll have to work with that. And leadership required for transformation is different than our concepts of leadership that we have had up until now. So I would like to summarize this quickly. I see the time, the clock's moving fast here. You know, innovation H2H is about starting from human needs and finding human ideas to meet those needs. But in between that, you have a lot of human interaction and you have a lot of human choices to make. The interactions happen between teams, leaders, between humans and machines, and choices you have so many options, you have to make decisions, you have to deal with ethics, and you have to deal with decisions at every stage. Should I do this? Should I not do this? Do I go? Do I no go? That's why I think innovation is an H2H business. It really is not a B2B or a B2C. The B2B and B2C, they fall in the value chain somewhere in between that starts with a human and ends with a human. How I got here is, when I started innovation coaching practice about 8 years ago, I developed lots of models. And then last year, I published 4 books. Actually, Sergey here ordered it, and there are 2 sets that INSA over here has it, and you can refer to that. But it still felt incomplete to me. And some of my friends started asking me questions about what is the role of human in each of these books that you have written. And you see, these books are also around why, what, and how. And within the how, I had a process, and I had the human piece of it. And I would say, I got it covered over here, and said, no, that's not true. Then somebody came to me and he said, Ripi, did you notice that all the cover pages of your books have a human on it? I had unintentionally made it. I did not know it that way, but each of those cover pages had humans on it. So he said, Ripi, you need to create another volume which talks about human to human. So I did the extract of human elements from all these 4 books, added the diversity piece, ethics piece, and the cyber physical biological piece to create a volume 5, which is on H2H innovation. And I would like to present the very first copy of that book to Sergey here today. Now. Thank you for having me.
Okay.
This is volume 5, the very first copy of volume 5 for you.
Okay, can I open?
Yes, you can. Yes, you can. Yes, let's check. It's not the
Let's
other one.
check because
Human error, right? I could make a mistake and give him the wrong book.
That's okay.
That's okay. That's okay. It's the correct one.
Thank you, Ripi. Oh, okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Ripi.
If you want to connect with me, LinkedIn is the best way. My books are available on Amazon. I also have an Inspiring Next YouTube channel where I put my previous lectures, and even if today there's one which will probably be linked to that one as well. So you can always connect with me.
Merci Ripi pour cette fabuleuse conférence liée à l'innovation. Je suis un petit peu ému. Et donc on peut passer à des questions que l'on peut poser en anglais, préférablement pour moi, ou si vous le souhaitez, traduire, que je puisse traduire cette question en français. Il répondra en anglais de façon à ce que tout le monde puisse communiquer entre eux. Donc y a-t-il des questions, s'il vous plaît?
So the bribe is working, huh? I gave people balls saying, not
Yeah.
asking questions, it's working.
Okay. And the translation seems to give also the same thing.
Okay.
Ripi, I will ask a question.
Okay.
Because you send us nice gift, because this is a gift. Probably this is a gift that we already have in here, because we are still alive. But just a reminding that this gift should be kept safe. And but when we are speaking about digital, numerics, digitalization, data, server, eating, and how can we manage to use the data to store them with the consequence in terms of energy and how to manage this in order to use the innovation of the data and use keep safe about our Earth.
Yeah, so that's a very good question, and people ask that to me all the time. It does not mean that you stop innovation. It just means that you innovate, first thing, responsibly. Okay, be aware of it. Second, find a way to compensate for what you are doing. If you know that you're creating more carbon dioxide than you should, figure out a way to capture that back, to grow enough plants, to have enough trees, to manage the ecosystem. Think about how you reduce the waste at every stage, the waste of food, the waste of any material. There's a term that's very common. I did not use it. It's called circular economy. Nature recycles everything. Otherwise, we would not have been living. Nature finds a way to recycle everything very, very fast. We somehow find a way to dispose of material very, very fast. Why do we have to use disposable utensils when we can use ceramic that can be washed and reused, right? Can we reduce wastage in every aspect of life? Reduce waste, repurpose anything that you have. If I have this shirt, jacket, and it can be used for something else until it is completely gone, right? Why not use it? Why do I have to say, oh, this is now 4-year-old, let me just put it in the trash and buy a new one because I can buy a new one? We are messing up the planet not because that's the only choice, because we can. We feel that we are rich enough and we can create waste. We don't think like that. How often do people change cell phones? We create so much electronic waste by just, oh, there's a new technology, I want a new phone. And what happens to the old one? It's going to the garbage. We are creating so much landfill on the electronic side. Hardware is real terrible. You asked me a question on the software, data side. I don't know if you know it or not, but by next year, Netflix and Zoom, their carbon footprint will exceed the aviation industry's carbon footprint. Each email creates about 5 grams of carbon dioxide, and each email with a photo attachment creates about 50 grams of carbon dioxide. The video conference, I was very glad to see when we had 80 people today in the afternoon on Zoom, and most of them had their video turned off. That was a very good example. That's the kind of a thing, responsibility we have to take. That if I do not need to create carbon dioxide, I should not create carbon dioxide. And if I'm creating, I must compensate for it. When I just flew with the Air France ticket, it tells me how many kilograms of carbon dioxide I'm creating. And when we purchased the ticket, it said, would you like to compensate for that by giving another 18 euros, which will be used towards planting trees? That's a responsible action. We're not saying don't fly. We are not saying don't make airplanes. But we are saying if you made airplane, make sure you also plant trees to compensate for that. It's the awareness that we need to compensate. It's the awareness that we should have a circular economy. Figure out a way that instead of having a raw material going through production, consumption, and becoming waste, raw material, production, manufacturing, repurpose, recycle, back, make the economy circular, make the material circular. Stop using the materials which cannot be recycled. Stop creating trash. I can go on this topic for a long time.
Yeah.
This is so close to my heart now. So
Merci
I will
Ripi.
stop.
Merci Ripi, encore bravo.